everybody, welcome back to the journey of my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing an original book tag by Danny Dabbles, and as I was watching her video I was like, oh man, this is really fun. I'm gonna do this too, whether I get actually tagged or not. And then she did tag me, so I was like, perfect, now I have an excuse to make this video. But I just really like it. I thought that all of the prompts were really interesting, and I hope it catches on and a lot of people do it. And Danny also mentioned doing it as an annual tradition, which I could see myself doing too, because it really is a recap of what I've learned this year about reading and what books I like, what books I don't like. So I'm really interested to hear a lot of different people's perspectives on this. I would love to hear your answers in the comments, or if you make videos, please make a video about this one too, even if I don't specifically tag you. I really hope that a lot of people answer these questions, because I think it's really helpful to think through all of this going into the new year as we're all starting to work on our TBRs and stuff. And this is also a really good kind of year-end video that I can do now. I know a lot of people are already putting out their top 10s of 2022 and their 2023 TBR, and I'm like, I am currently reading at least one book that is probably going to be in my top 10, and I will probably read one or two more books that could be in my top 10, and I don't know what books I'm going to have available at the beginning of 2023 yet, so I'm not really ready to make those videos. Those will be coming soon and I'm excited for them, but this is a good way to go ahead and start kind of getting into that year-end, beginning of year reading mode without having to speak for books that I have not actually read or gotten yet. Prompt 1 is something about your reading that you've learned you love. And I had a hard time picking for this because I think there are several things, not necessarily that I had no idea that I love, but that I have come to appreciate a lot more in my reading this year. But the thing that I picked is just characters who care. Like, care about other people, care about the world, care about what's going on, care about their own role in things. Like, I never used to specifically think about this in the books that I read. I was really just more into, are exciting, adventurous things happening? Is there mystery? Is there interesting world building? That was kind of all that I was there for. But as I've read more books and just thought about storytelling more, I've really come to care about and appreciate a lot more when characters actually care. And the example for this that I thought was really good to kind of illustrate the point is the Mysterious Benedict Society, which I did enjoy the puzzles and the mystery and everything. I thought the plot was really fun, but what I most liked was the main character, Rainy, and how much he was taking responsibility as kind of the leader of the group, and he cared a lot about Mr. Benedict, he cared a lot about the other kids, he cared a lot about what was going to happen to the whole world if the quest, if the mission failed. And I just really appreciated that about him, and that really drove his character arc and made him sympathetic to read about. I also mentioned this in the video that I just made about Kestrel's Midnight Song, where one of my favorite things about that was the protagonist and how much he cared for his sheep. And I didn't read that this year, but that did kind of play into my thinking about how much it matters to me that a character actually cares what is happening in their story, and how much more interesting that is to me when the characters actually have relationships that they care about, and when they're not just walking through the story because they just want to get home, or because they just want it to be over, or because they're just trying to live an easier life. I think that was why Goblet of Fire was one of my least favorite Harry Potter books this year, was because in that book I felt like Harry was just a lot more focused on, okay, I need to win this competition so that I can not die and get back to my normal life. And so I cared a lot less about that book as I was reading it than about most of the other ones. By the last couple of books, especially, I did feel like Harry cared a lot more, and so I was enjoying those more, especially Order of the Phoenix. I felt like really had a lot of characters who were very involved. So that's just something that I've noticed as a pattern. I've gotten kind of tired of books where the characters don't even really seem to care about or enjoy what they're doing, and I get really, really excited about books like this, where the characters really do care and have friendships and are very emotionally involved in what they're doing. Prompt number 2 is something about your reading that you've learned you hate. And the thing that, as I was looking back through some of the books that I've read this year and some of the books that I didn't really enjoy as much from this year, the biggest thing that stood out to me was just books that felt kind of boring and bogged down, because I felt like they had too many characters and too many complications. And this is not really what I would have expected to say I've discovered that I hate in a book, because I usually really like complicated plots and big casts of characters and big worlds, and I still really do like that. But what bugs me is when I just feel like there are tons of characters for no particular reason, or when a lot of things are happening in the plot, but I can't really see how they're advancing the overall plot or how they're progressing what I really want to see in the book. If I feel like there's just a ton of extraneous material, like I like long books usually, but if I feel like a book is long and it didn't need to be long, then that really gets on my nerves, because I have a lot of books that I want to read and I don't want to waste my time on a book that is longer than it needed to be. And usually that just makes me enjoy the whole book less. So this isn't something that I exactly hate with a burning passion. It's more like just this makes me bored. It makes me not enjoy a book. And I'm thinking of the books that I didn't finish this year, which was not many. It was basically for this reason. This was one of the main reasons that I would DNF a book this year, was just that I felt like it had so many pieces that weren't serving the overall story and that it didn't really need. Prompt 3 is something that you've changed your mind on. And I didn't really have a super specific book for this one, because I would just say that my answer is YA in general, like the whole thing. That used to be almost all of what I read. I used to really enjoy YA and get excited, like, oh, a new popular YA book. And now I'm just tired of it. I think I've had enough of it for now. I think I'm less in the target audience than I used to be. I've heard that the target audience for YA is technically like 12 to 17. Obviously, tons of adults still read it, and some YA books are still really good and really engaging for adults and everything. Maybe I just read too much of it for a while, but I feel like modern YA is just not my thing at all. It tends to just have so many tropes. A lot of times it's extremely fixated on romance to the detriment of everything else. The majority of protagonists tend to be girls that I find very unpleasant to spend my reading time with. Sometimes the world building is interesting, but in like YA fantasy, I tend to find the world building kind of forced. It doesn't feel like something that we're discovering, but that's always been there. It feels more like something that somebody just made up, which obviously all fantasy worlds are made up, but they feel a little bit just more manufactured a lot of times. So I still am planning on probably reading a few YA books next year, but I really want to cut back on the YA books and get back into some more middle grade. I read more middle grade this year, especially in the second half of this year, and I really enjoy getting back to that. So I think I really want to pull in some more middle grade books for next year, and then also some more adult books, especially classics, like I'll talk about a little later. But yeah, I feel very ready to reduce the number of YA books that I read, even though that used to be like pretty much my favorite demographic. Prompt 4 is something that you've learned helps you pick better books. So yeah, here is where I was going to talk about classics, because I have read a lot more classics this year. I made it my goal to read at least one classic per month, and I haven't done the official tally on that, but I'm pretty sure that I did read at least one classic per month, and I've made videos about several of them, and from those videos I think you can tell that I have by and large really enjoyed the classics that I've read. There have been a couple classics I read that I wasn't as big a fan of, but even if I didn't particularly enjoy the book, I still feel like they always have a lot of material for discussion and deeper thought, and just learning about the time period and the culture that that book was written in. So even if I don't enjoy a classic a whole bunch, I don't feel like I completely wasted my time. Like if I read, a newer book or a more obscure book and I'm like, okay, that wasn't that great. Like what was even the point of reading that? I didn't get anything out of that. And again, along the same lines, I think the other thing that has really helped me find better books this year is friend recommendations, and specifically books that have been recommended by a lot of friends and a wide variety of friends. Quite a few times I've picked up a book that just one person recommended, and sometimes that's how I find really, really good books. Sometimes just one person has great taste and that goes really well. But a lot of times I have also found that I've picked up a book just because I liked the cover, or just because the blurb sounded interesting to me, just kind of caught my fancy, and that usually doesn't result in the best books that I read. So I've really tried to whittle down the vast majority of my reading to things that are very established and time tested and tested by a whole lot of people reading them. Like when I was really trying to dig into the sci-fi genre starting last year, also continuing into this year, I started with, okay, what are the classic staple foundational sci-fi books? One of them is even literally called Foundation. And then I just sort of went through the best of list, and just kind of hit the biggest titles on, what everybody was saying was the best sci-fi. And I found some books that I really, really liked that way. And I've read more books by those authors, more books in those series. So that's definitely something I want to continue to do, is like maybe get particularly interested in one genre or subgenre and look up, okay, what are the best books in this category, who are the best authors in this category, and then really focus on that so that I'm getting the highest quality content of the type of book that I'm looking for. Prompt 5 is to name something that has prevented your enjoyment of reading. And I think one of the big things this year that has done that is just trying to read books that are too similar, too close together. I do feel like I have a fairly good system for picking my books each month so that I'm not reading anything that's too similar and so that I have a wide variety going on, but I haven't always stuck exactly with my system, of course, because things come up and plans change, and sometimes I don't feel like reading this book right now, so I read this book instead. So sometimes I've ended up reading books really too close together. I mentioned that with Amari and the Night Brothers, where I tried reading that right after Harry Potter, and I so much did not feel like reading it at that point. I'm even getting that a little bit with reading Percy Jackson right now, even though it's been a couple months since Harry Potter at this point. And there have also been times when I've tried to read like multiple books that are not in my main genres at one time. And I think it's really helpful to have at least one book going all the time that is not fantasy or sci-fi or something that I would usually read. But if I have multiple books of that kind going on at one time, sometimes it's a little much. And then on the other hand, if I like only have fantasy books or if I have multiple sci-fi books, then that just kind of makes me not want to read any of them. So I found that that's not great, and I probably next year want to try a little bit harder to keep the similar books separated out a little bit farther. And then prompt 6 is to name something that has improved your enjoyment of reading, and basically it's the same answer, just the other side of it. It's really improved my enjoyment of reading this year to read such a wide variety of books and to read completely different books together. Like one example of this that I thought of was reading And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I do not read much mystery. I want to read some more mystery, but I was really not reading anything else like this at the time, and I just got completely sucked in. I read most of the thing in one night, and that just really helped me enjoy this book more, to not be reading anything like it at the time. And I also think it helped me enjoy my other reads more, to have this as kind of a palate cleanse, as a refresh, as a reset, so that I'm not just constantly reading big chunky fantasy books, which is kind of my natural reading inclination. It's actually really helped me appreciate those books more, to have breaks and to get other perspectives. And I think reading all of the classics that I've read has helped with this too, to get a wider variety in time period of book that I'm reading, so that I'm not just reading things that are new releases or not just things from the early 2000s or something, to really go farther back in history and to read books from other countries and things. It's also been really helpful to just get more of that variety, so I don't feel like I'm trying to read the same book over and over. And then the last thing is to tag some other people. So I want to tag Naomi Lexi, Emma Bennett, romance author, and Tori Morrow. And I really enjoyed watching all of their channels, and if you guys want to make this tag, I would love to see it. Let me know if you decide to make it. If not, that's totally fine, but I thought I would just let you guys know that I would love to hear your answers to these questions, and like I said, I would like to hear everybody's answers to these questions too. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and until I make those videos, thanks for journeying with me. Bye!